Led by Bishop Elaine Stanofsky, members of the Rocky Mountain and Yellowstone Conferences have spent several years researching the history of Methodist Church involvement in what has become known as the Sand Creek Massacre, and establishing relationships with tribal leaders of the Arapaho and Cheyenne tribes of our three-state region. The goal is that on this, the 150th anniversary of the massacre, healing can begin in a more meaningful way for descendants. This historic annual conference was characterized by a call to repentance. This is a history we must all know.
The Sand Creek Massacre and Acts of Repentance. At the General Conference in 2012, Steve Sidorik, who is here and you'll meet later, and Young Suk Kong, and a number of people who are present, helped to plan and lead the General Conference in Acts of Repentance for harm done by the church to native indigenous cultures around the world. And in that action, there was also a commitment that every annual conference would also participate in acts of repentance for harm committed. And so in this area, on this year, which is the 150th anniversary of the Sand Creek Massacre, we focus on the Sand Creek Massacre, not because it's the only important incident, not because it affects all of the people, but because it is here in our territory, and our Methodist forebearers are so central to the story that we can't fail to know this history. So, we can't know who we are. We can't understand the world we live in and the social relationships we are part of. We can't contribute to the fullness of the life of people we live with as neighbors and strangers if we don't know this history. So come with me, humbly, to walk this path, to listen, to learn. Walk gently on the land.
In 1864, hostilities characterized interactions between white settlers, the white government, and native tribes. The territorial government authorized citizens to kill Indians who did not go to Fort Lyon. This dividing of peaceful Indians and non-peaceful Indians made extermination fair game. Peace chiefs took their people to Fort Lyon and were sent from there to camp at Sand Creek. It was then that Colonel John Chivington led the attack. More than 200 people died, most of them peaceful Indians encamped where the government had sent them. Tribal descendants of the massacre were invited to the 2014 session of the Rocky Mountain Annual Conference. A full day was spent touring the Sand Creek Massacre Monument on the eastern plains near Eads, Colorado. It was a time of quiet reflection, a time of learning, and for some, a time to remember. Later in the evening, the conference came together at a banquet where tribal descendants had a chance to reflect on the meaning of healing relationships. Reverend Chuck Schuster helped organize the day's activities.
It was suggested that we recognize the significance of that tragic time when over 200 women, children, and peaceful tribal leaders were slaughtered by the cold, calculated action of a former Methodist pastor. He continued his ministry, sponsored by the territorial governor, a Methodist layperson. Soon occurred to us that we have involvement and investment in that history. In fact, it's not ancient history, it's current, and for us, were we not to claim that history, it would be to have the effect of perpetuating the atrocity. The descendants of that event, forever caught in the sadness of their grief, suggested that we make a pilgrimage, and that all of us make a pilgrimage to the site of the massacre. They wanted us to go to their sacred place. The descendants of Sand Creek invited us to be at their sacred place. And in doing that, they have taken their grief and have moved to a level of grace for that invitation, for us to join them given the history and our part in it, borders on something very special and I would say holy.
Sand Creek today spoke to me through the wind as I sat there overlooking the bend and Big Sandy. I heard a sod in the air. I have been taught that tears are the highest form of prayer, and I had many today. The songs, however, gave me some feeling of comfort, and I believe they were songs of joy, that we were all there.
Well, I guess what it meant for me to be here with you guys is, in a way, I guess a sense of unity, coming together to, for you guys learning and us being able to tell you guys what Sand Creek was to us. As I shared with the people on the bus that I was on, you know, when I was telling the people back home that I was coming down here to this conference with the United Methodist, you know, there for Sand Creek, you know, the first thing that I would hear was, why? Why are you going down there to see them? Colonel Chivington was a Methodist. He's the one that led the attack. I can go back home and, you know, tell the people, you know, it's a time for healing the relationship between the United Methodists and the tribes.
So today at the site was another healing spot for me. I shed another tear today, and I talked with a lump in my throat to let people know that who we are. I don't want them to feel sorry for us. I just want them to know that we're loving and caring people.
Where do we go from here? The Sand Creek Spiritual Healing Run will take place this year from November 29th through December 3rd. Runners and walkers commence from the massacre site and finally end in Denver at the state capitol building. Many native would-be runners simply cannot afford to participate. You or several persons from your church are invited to sponsor a runner. Your charge conference presiding elder can tell you how. And you may want to join in the final mile of the run from the Silas Soule Memorial to the Capitol on December 3rd. Bishop Elaine reminds us that
we all have reasons not to enter this relationship. And yet we are drawn. Because we are one family, because we are one people, we're drawn to step across the divides between us. It's not easy. But it's amazing and powerful when it happens.